Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Well, hello and welcome to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and today I want to share some information from nature and the gardens and its relationship to the time of year. So we just passed the winter solstice, and I want to talk about the significance of this time of year and how it relates to health and how it relates to everybody. And here, in the gardens, we deal with the elements, we deal with the moon cycles and the sun cycles, and those sorts of things affect us more maybe than people that live in the city. And a lot of reasons for that. But first of all, the solstice is the shortest day and the longest night. And it's the time when the earth poles have its maximum tilt away from the sun. And so it's the time when the least amount of sunlight hits the northern hemisphere. Of course, we live in the northern hemisphere, so that's important here. In the southern hemisphere, everything's backwards. So winter is summer and summer is winter and all of that. But we're talking about the northern hemisphere here. And it's kind of interesting because you get to this time and it's right around Christmas time, right around New Year's, and it's kind of interesting if you know the history of these holidays. Generally, most of our holidays that are, Christian centered today came from holidays that were nature centered or, even pagan origins. And the winter solstice was, technically a pagan, which means non-Christian um, origins, because long before there were Christians, the people recognized the cycle of the sun and the importance of the sun. And, the sun was revered and even worshiped by some people. But the truth is, out here on earth, all life does come from the sun. And so when we're in a time when there's less of it, it affects us. It affects the plants, it affects the weather, it affects our mood, it affects our ability to receive vitamin D naturally, and so many other things. And, the farther north you are, the more extreme that is. So when you get up, around Alaska, northern Canada, Iceland, around the Arctic Circle, the days are really short and the nights are really long. And this goes on for a while. And it's not like, all of a sudden, boom, it's solstice and you get this one short day and then all of a sudden, whatever, everything goes back to normal. The days have been getting shorter here, since autumn, or actually since summer solstice. And that's when the longest day is. So right after the longest day, days start getting shorter, and you don't notice it for a good long while. And they get shorter and shorter and shorter, and then you get into fall, and you get into the equinox, where the days are even, 12 hours sunlight, 12 hours darkness. And then they keep getting shorter until finally you get to the winter solstice. And throughout history, there's been traditions that honored this time, that included lighting candles and feasting and expressing gratitude, for the light returning. So when you get past this day, like today's the day after solstice here right now when I'm recording this. And so technically we got a little more light today than yesterday. So, there's something to celebrate. And, if you think about it, um, the reduction of sunlight affects the mood. And there's even a syndrome, I guess you could call it, or a disorder. Everything's a disorder these days. But it's funny. It's actually the acronym is SAD, and it's for seasonal affective disorder. And it's a type of a depression that affects people, some people during the winter months. And it can include, low energy, irritability, sleep issues, changes in appetite. And these are things that happen, the farther north you go, the longer the nights are. And there's all kinds of examples of that, even in places that are, cloudy a lot, Seattle, Oregon. There's all kinds of depression um, incidents, cases that arise from the lack of sunlight. And in places where it's sunny a lot, they tend to be vacation places, places where, the cultures are happy. There's a lot of, there's something about the sun that brings more than just life in the sense of we get to live, but life in the sense of the things that make life worth living, the joy and the the goodness that comes out of living. So let's look at this a little bit. Recognizing the importance of this time, not just the solstice, but the winter time when the days are short. Um, I think it's important. It can encourage individuals to focus on finding joy and connection during the darker days. Um, if you think about it and you focus yourself on being grateful, finding joy in things, and that's maybe one of the things at the holiday season, regardless of what you celebrate, if it's Christmas or Hanukkah or the Saturnalia or Festivus or whatever. Um, Finding community and family and joy and things that you're grateful for. Thanksgiving time is a time where people think about the things they're grateful for. Christmas is a time where gifts are shared. Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, all these things. There's gifts involved, and there's joy that comes from giving and receiving gifts. And so maybe there's some logic and reason behind these holidays beyond just celebrating something that was recognized way back when. Maybe there was some good reason for it. Maybe the people of old recognized that this was a time when it was easy to be depressed, easy to go into your own, I don't know, darkness, into spiraling down into depression and all of that. And maybe they realized that just sharing some time together, sharing a meal, sharing a gift, presenting somebody with something brought a little joy and kind of counteracted all that. So let's get into it a little bit. So, light exposure. This is something that it's funny. Recently, I've seen an upsurge of awareness around the value of sunlight as opposed to um, there's been a lot of negative marketing about the danger of sunlight and the need to put on sunscreen and protect yourself from the sun, and it's so harmful. But the truth is, if you're not getting burnt, which obviously you can avoid by your choices, sunlight is crucial. It's crucial for vitamin D synthesis. And if you don't get enough sunlight and you're, not taking whatever supplements to offset that, you're going to get deficient in vitamin D and maybe more than that. But certainly vitamin D is really an important element, an important piece of our health puzzle. And there's all kinds of symptoms that come from lowered um, levels of vitamin D in the system, including weakened immune function and mood disorders, which makes perfect sense, right? And maybe that's one of the major contributing factors in the depression that's associated with this time of the year, this seasonal um, syndrome. And so what can you do about it? There's a lot of things you can do about it. There's light therapy. There's, you can do infrared. There's all kinds of, we have technology now has lights of all the spectrum. And, we have LED grow lights. We have mood lights. We have lights that can mimic the sun pretty well. And maybe it's not perfect, but certainly it's a way to offset um, some of the negative stuff. So if I lived in a place further north than I do, I live in Southern California, so we're not too affected. Days are short. They seem short. It gets dark about 4:30, 4:45, and doesn't get light till 6:30 or so, and that's short enough days for me, that's for sure. But further north you get,
Hi, this is Joe Grumbine, and I wanted to share an update. The platform that hosts this podcast has made some changes to the subscriber settings, and we have a number of subscriber-only episodes that we offer to the supporters, and for a minimum of $3 a month, we can get you signed up. And if you're already signed up and you're having some kind of trouble locating these episodes in the other platforms, I would say maybe the best answer is to unsubscribe and then resubscribe. I'm sorry for the hassle. I don't have any way to make a change, but I'm very grateful for all the support. Thank you.
the shorter those days get, the longer those nights get. And, so this is certainly focused on people that live north of where I do, but that's a lot of people. Um, so you can do outdoor things during daylight hours as much as you can to help offset that. Get outside. This is, ecotherapy, garden therapy, therapeutic horticulture is all about that. Even if the days are short, even if you've got 8 or 10 hours of sunlight, well, great. Spend a couple of them outside. Take your shirt off or put on a bathing suit, even if it's a little chilly. Get that sun on your skin. Wear some shorts if you can. At very least, a short sleeve shirt and get as much exposure as you can this time of year. I don't think you're going to have much of a problem of getting burnt. And, we here in Southern California, especially, we have plenty of warm days, even in the wintertime. And, you can certainly deal with that. And also, there are foods that have a lot of vitamin D, and, we can get into that. I'm going to probably do a few sections on nutrition and start talking about where to get certain elements. And we're going to talk about microgreens and, growing vegetables and all that kind of stuff. But we're not there right now. But definitely do the research. There are plenty of foods that do have a lot of vitamin D in there. And then if you have to, um, there are supplements. Do your research. There's a D3K2 combination that's supposed to be pretty good, and I take that from time to time. It helps to benefit your immune system. It helps your body to be able to absorb nutrients and to work better. So occasionally, I don't do a lot of supplements, but definitely from time to time. So think about this, right? Summertime, the days are long. We stay up late. We work longer hours. We play longer. And we probably sleep a little less, and you get yourself tired out. Maybe you wear yourself out a little bit over the course of the summer and the fall. So definitely you can use um, these long nights as a time to get yourself back on track, catch up on that sleep. I find it's super easy. I go to bed in the wintertime, usually by 9 o'clock, and it's already been dark for 4 hours. It feels like right now it's 6:30. It's already been dark for an hour and a half. I could probably go to sleep in a half an hour right now if I really wanted to. And it doesn't mess up my circadian rhythm working with the sunlight because, frankly, it's been dark for a while. And so, this is a good time to, if you're able to, based on your schedule, maybe kids or whatever it is, afford yourself a little more sleep. The more I believe that you can sleep with the darkness, the sun being down and being awake with the sun coming up, I think personally it affects my health. And I generally am up all the time when the sun is up, and I sleep as much as I can when the sun's down. So in the wintertime, I definitely get more sleep. And, aside from this cancer, which is not contagious, I generally don't get sick. I haven't caught a flu or a virus or a bug that was going around I think it's been since 2012 when I was locked up. I got sick the last time from something that was contagious. And, I deal with allergies and stuff that is environmental, but nothing, nothing that I caught from anybody. So there's something I'm doing and, that's helping that. And I believe prioritizing sleep is certainly a big part of my health regimen. And I've talked about sleep more than a couple of times, and I'll probably get deeper into it from time to time. But, let's take advantage of this and get more sleep. Go to bed a little earlier and sleep in a little bit more. You can't make up sleep. Like if you go days and days and you're not getting enough sleep, you can't just have one good sleep night and catch up. It just doesn't work that way. The toll it takes on your body is accumulative, and you don't just accumulatively make it up. So definitely, I would say take this time to be more mindful of prioritizing health-related activities. We realize, well, we've only got so many hours of the daytime. Like I know that when I get up, I try to get my butt outside earlier and earlier because I know I've only got so many hours to be outside right now. And, I can, if I need to do, some lab work or making products or whatever, um, I can do it after dark. I can go in the lab and just work. So I try to do as much of my outdoor stuff as I can during the waking hours and, take on other projects that can be done inside afterwards. So that's a thing. But being mindful, I think, at this time of the value of the daylight time and making sure you make time for health promoting activities and maybe say, well, I'm going to definitely get some exercise today and or I'm going to, do some gardening or I'm going to whatever it is, I'm going to get outside and see some nature. I'm going to go fishing. I'm going to go on a hike. I'm going to do that thing that brings me some joy and gets me some sunlight. Paying attention to that this time of year, I think, is important. Um, then there's nutrition. So in the summertime, there's a lot of delicious fruits that are ripe and the peaches and the apricots and the berries and the melons and all of that stuff is local and ripe, and we eat. We're going out to eat a lot. The days are long. Go out and grab a piece of pizza or go to the beach and have a picnic or whatever it is. And, we eat maybe not as good during the summertime for that reason. Maybe we eat more sugary foods. Maybe we eat, we drink a lot of drinks. We drink more, I think, in the summertime, and we tend to like drinks that have a little sweetness to them. So, I think there's definitely a propensity to eat more and maybe eat a little not as good during the summertime. But in the wintertime, I think a lot of times we shift ourselves to foods that are just naturally hearty and warm and delicious, like soups and chilies and stews, and um, those are kinds of foods that generally might have, some good root vegetables in them. We probably eat more vegetables maybe in the wintertime. I don't know, there's summertime and a lot of salads and things like that, but definitely the soups and the hot food is really good. Like we had a celebration ceremony over the weekend, and we do a potluck out here after the teepee ceremony, and I don't know, I think four different people brought soup and four different kinds of soup, and yeah, it was tasty. Some chicken soup and some vegan chili and a couple of vegetable soups, and just really warm, tasty, hearty food that's just full of nutrition. So I think this is a good time to focus on that. Here's another thing maybe that's important about this time of year. With all the darkness, it's a good time to reflect. I talk about journaling a lot. And I think reflecting this is a good time of year to do that, to look back on the year and see what you've done, and maybe look at goals and start writing things down. And there's also a time where community is important. Um, and our connection, the human connection. I've talked many times about the value of community, and when it comes to longevity and it comes to health, um, the blue zone communities are generally very family centric. There's a focus on community in the areas of the world where people live the longest, and it would seem to me anyways, I would say that it's kind of I don't know, we could establish that it's a truth that human beings tend to be more healthy when they're engaged in a good community. And so this is a time that, people get together. You get together for Thanksgiving, you get together for Christmas, for Kwanzaa, for Hanukkah, for any of the high holy days, for New Year's, a lot of things that people celebrate this time of year. Maybe it's not a coincidence, maybe we've stacked a bunch of holidays this time of year because in the summertime, it's easy to get together and go on a vacation and get out and go to the beach and go do fun things. But in the wintertime, I think we've sort of made it a priority. And I think that that's important. And I think there's a lot of value to it. And so, and it doesn't have to be your biological family. I don't know. I talked a little bit in public about my biological family and, in my opinion, the dysfunction of it. And, there are members of my biological family that I'm connected to and have a relationship with, but there are a lot more members of my biological family that I don't, including those that are closest to me biologically. And that's okay. It doesn't have anything to do with my sense of community and my sense of connection, because I have found other people that are not biologically related to me and found that same connection that I would. In fact, we call each other brother and sister, aunt and uncle and nephew and we use those terms the same as if we were biologically related, and we treat each other the way we would want to be treated in those roles. So I have people in my life that I call nephew and niece that I have no blood relation to whatsoever, but I treat them with respect and affection and caring, the same as I would a biological nephew or niece. I have brothers and sisters that I'm not biologically related to at all, and and yet I feel for them closer, much closer than I do to any of my biological brother or sisters. And it's choices that we make. So find those people, whether you're related to them or not. Don't find yourself stuck in a crappy family and feel like you just are dealt bad cards and you have to somehow go through the motions of, dealing with the holidays and the drunk, nephew or aunt or brother or whatever that you have to go and deal with, or the dysfunctional, the narcissism, the drama, all the problems. You just don't need that. And remember that, these are all choices that we make. And I stopped hanging out with my biological family on the holidays almost 20 years ago, and I don't miss it at all. And, there was a time when my dad was alive that I'd go and visit, I'd drop by sometime during the holidays, but certainly wasn't going to be on the day. And I think when I realized that a long time ago, it changed my perspective, and I found people that I could share those feelings with, and that care and compassion and empathy and all the good stuff that you want to have your family to share with you. So I thought that was kind of important, and I figured that out. And I think being mindful of these things, just like everything, make a big difference. So on that note, engaging in mindfulness and gratitude practices this time can have vastly improving elements for your emotional health and help you to enhance feelings of connections to others in the natural world. And just remember, being mindful and grateful are two of your most powerful tools any time of the year for any purpose. But for this time of year, I think I don't know, maybe it's easier because you have more time, that there's not anything really going on. There's not necessarily anything you have to do. You don't have to scroll through the social media. You don't have to watch TV. You don't have to listen to a podcast. Of course, you should listen to this one, but you don't have to find yourself, you know, stuck with busy stuff. In the summertime, it's a lot easier. So many places to go, so many things to do, and people are always, busy during the summertime. So it's a good time to take some time and go deep and get mindful and remember the importance of gratitude. I've talked about gratitude. I'll always talk about gratitude. It makes all the difference in the world. So I would say that the winter solstice, it's a significant event, certainly. It's a thing that happens once a year, and if you look at it, recognize it, and celebrate the fact that we made it. The people of old would recognize they got to that day and they survived, and now the days are going to get longer, so their odds of making it all the way through the winter increase as the days are getting longer. Every day the day's longer, you got more time in the sunlight, more potential to accomplish. And so, maybe giving that a little credit and understanding that these seasonal changes affect us, and being mindful of what we can do to offset those effects or to enhance those effects, depending on what we're trying to do, I think is important. So I don't know. I think that that's some good stuff to think about. And we're going to continue a number of series or a number of episodes that get into kind of the lessons of the season as pertain to gardening. And we're going to talk about pruning and opening up sunlight and how that correlates to your personal life, not just your rose bushes. And this is kind of funny. This time of year, we have a surplus of guests in the summertime, and I stack up sometimes all the way for weeks, from the time I record to the time that I publish an episode. But this time of year, the guests get thinner, and so I'm opening up the floor for any of you that have a story to share. I've been booking some guests, people that I know that have a life experience, and people that are going through something and maybe haven't solved it, just like I shared my cancer experience and how ultimately I did solve it, or I believe I've solved it anyways. We'll find out soon. But going from a diagnosis and all the steps I took along the way and how I found answers, I think it's important to share those things. So I've got a number of people that we're starting to schedule and book that maybe aren't experts in their field, but they're certainly experts in the thing they're going through. And maybe they haven't solved their problem, but maybe they're sharing their process. And I think that's important because we have listeners of all stages, people that are in every aspect, every walk of life, um, every little facet you could think of humanity. We have somebody that fits that. So I encourage you, if you're interested in coming on, being a guest and sharing your story, get in touch with me. I'm easy to reach. In fact, I'll give you my phone number here. It's 951-436-6312. Email grumbinejoe@gmail.com. grumbinejoe@gmail.com. And I will answer you if you reach out, and we can schedule. And I look forward. We've had over 200 guests on this show since we started this podcast, and I love that. I believe it gives us a richness, and the community that we're building through this podcast is developing in a beautiful way. So on that note, I want to thank you all that have made this show possible, and thank you for listening and talking about it and sharing it. And if you really like the podcast, consider supporting it by being a subscriber. And absolutely, please share, tell people about this. The more listeners that download, the more exposure we get, and the better the show is. All right. Well, thank you, and we will see you next time.
This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right. Well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.